Our adaptation of Hamlet takes place during the American Civil Rights era. Hamlet is the son of a famous civil rights activist where he feels the need to avenge his father's death, as well as gain equality amongst the black and white races. Along this journey, he loses control of his real goal and makes the social fight personal. All of the actors portraying black civil rights leaders are in black and the white supremacists are in white. This is not meant to be racist at all. The photos are all done in black and white to give a true nod to old times and the closed-minded nature of many involved. In the first set of pictures, we have two pictures from Act 1, Scene 5. In this scene, I am the ghost and Hamlet is played by Sean, and we have a portrayal of Hamlet with a lowered civil rights protest sign, along with the ghost in the background, staring directly at the camera. The ghost is wrapped in a black blanket, representing that he was once a powerful black civil rights leader. The fact that the ghost is staring directly into the camera shows how willing the ghost is to be vulnerable because he has been hurt in his past. In the actual Hamlet, the ghost was hurt by the need for power. And in our adaptation, the ghost has been hurt in a similar way, but in this time, power rested in whether someone was black or white. Hamlet, similar to the original, is upset and frustrated that his father has come back, both dead and upset, causing him to avenge King Hamlet. In our adaptation, Hamlet is not only avenging his father, but he is also avenging the black community. In the second picture, Hamlet has fully surrendered to his father, representing the civil rights era in the sense that black people had to acknowledge the power on their united front. The ghost is looking directly at Hamlet due to his wrath falling on their relationship in a strictly family sense, which is also seen during the original Hamlet. Hamlet has fully comprehended the task at hand, which it was for him and his community to be seen as human beings worth kind treatment. The fact that Hamlet has fallen to the ground showcases the beginning of his madness, a theme that works its way through the entire book, and a theme, as we found through our research, was very prevalent in both sides of the civil rights movement.
The first picture in Act 2 describes a scene where Hamlet goes to Ophelia's room, looking very disheveled, and starts speaking nonsense. I act as Hamlet, and Grace acts as Ophelia. As far as similarities and differences go, the theme of madness is carried strongly throughout this scene as a similarity. The cause of our adaptation's madness is the fact that Hamlet has to constantly fight to be considered a human being. His madness overlaps into other areas of life, representing how the conversation of race cannot be avoided, like how the original Hamlet's conversations about power could not be avoided. Ophelia is unfortunately treated the same because through our research, we found out women, although more respected from the 1200s, still were not viewed as a complete working part of society. The main difference from the play and the reenactment is the black clothes in Ophelia's outfit, used to portray black civil rights activists. The second picture from Act 2 represents the scene in Hamlet where Polonius pays Rinaldo to spy on Laertes while he's studying abroad in Paris. This scene stresses the part of our research revolving around family dynamics, especially how in the 60s the household had strict rules. Maternal and patriarchal figures were held up to a certain standard, and both figures were supposed to take care of their kids. I act as Polonius, Vincent acts as Rinaldo, and Grace acts as Ophelia. Polonius wanting to spy over his kids represents how racial tensions swallowed the American mind to the point of Americans thinking that tension rests everywhere, causing overly cautious behavior. Polonius wants Laertes watched so that he knows if Laertes is doing well in school, upholding his role as a father, especially a white supremacist trying to maintain his power in society. Ophelia, as in the play, sits back and watches the scene play out, representing the slight lack of feminism in the era.
The first picture demonstrates the to be or not. Hamlet, who is played by Sean, is supposedly contemplating committing suicide. This scene showcases the internal struggle caused by the civil rights movement that happens in the midst of oppression. Even though the civil rights movement was a vivid fight for social justice, it was an exhausting demand to be seen as a worthy equal. The fact that a white supremacist, played by Vince, is watching Hamlet contemplate his life showcases how all human beings understand each other's pain but choose to ignore it in the fight of power. This also happens in Hamlet and Claudius's relationship, which is why the white supremacist coat is worn by both. Hamlet looks frustrated and puts his protestants down in this moment of depression. The second picture reflects the church scene in which Claudius, played by me, is praying and Hamlet is contemplating whether or not he should kill him. In our adaptation, instead of being in prayer, we have Claudius kneeling on the ground with a lighter in hand, attempting to burn a protest sign, because the hate in the 1960s is its own religion in the sense that all of the efforts to undermine other human beings were strong. Hamlet here has derailed from making justice available to all and makes it personal by having the sword in hand and stands to kill. This scene represents how Claudius remains unaware of his son's hate towards him. Claudius is dressed in a white coat and Hamlet is still in black with a serious look on his face. You cannot see Claudius's face because the hate going on is inhumane.
In Act 4, Scene 1, Claudius is receiving a phone call from Gertrude.
In Act 4, Scene 1, Claudius, portrayed by Vincent, is receiving a phone call from Gertrude, played by myself, that Polonius has died. The first picture displays the emotion that Claudius is exhibiting, while Gertrude, saddened by the incident, is delivering the news side by side. Gertrude has an open expression, full of emotion, because she has always been more accepting of Hamlet and his flaws, even at the beginning of the play. Claudius is hiding his face because his growing shame of Hamlet's self-centered nature has finally peaked. Coincidentally, Gertrude was at the scene of the murder and is overwhelmed by the tragedy that took place as represented in the photo. Focusing on the civil rights movement, Hamlet, a civil rights activist, has murdered Polonius because of his white supremacy and involvement in the protests and arguments about rights for all people. Due to the change in era, we have incorporated some technology, such as the phone used by the couple, to make the scene more modern to the 1960s time period. The next photo resembles Hamlet, played by Sean, covering up the dead Polonius, played by Sonakshi, while a black activist looks on in Act 4, Scene 2. Although Hamlet displays no guilt or remorse for the killing of Polonius, he is astonished that he executed the murder instead of failing to take action like previous encounters. Hamlet here is so detached from the civil rights movement and instead is just a human being able to commit horrible crimes. He is able to snap. In this photo, Hamlet is recognizing that he has limited time to hide Polonius's body, ultimately causing him to freeze and look back at what he had just done. Relating to the civil rights movement, the black activist shown in this scene is enthusiastic over Polonius's death because he is a white supremacist. However, the whole point of this scene is not to represent strictly race, but to bring attention to the human race and the lows that can overcome it when oppression hits. Also portrayed in this photo is a rundown bike in the right corner, resembling low class due to the appearance, which is used by the black activist to give Hamlet a hand in covering up the body.
In Act 5, Scene 2, in the first photo, Sean is acting as Hamlet, while Sonakshi is acting as... In Act 5, Scene 2, in the first image, Sean is acting as Hamlet, while Sonakshi is acting as Laertes. The changes we made to the play, where the swords were replaced by the protest boards, the fight became more mental than physical in the representation of our era. In the 1960s, human beings and their words became more of a weapon than the sword, as people were struggling to be viewed as other human beings, which includes the Hamlet in our adaptation. The protest boards are weapons in the sense that they weren't just inspirational sayings, but the visual representation of the messages white supremacists feared to hear. As for similarities, Hamlet is still caught up in the fight against Laertes, and their hate still exists, although it's fueled by race and power rather than kingdom and power. In the next photo, Hamlet is forcing Claudius, who is played by myself, to drink the poison while protesters represent Hamlet and Claudius' view on the racial issue. The composition of the scene remains close to the individual, but rather than seeing blood and gore, we see messy words and protest signs everywhere. The split protest board by Claudius indicates that black people are winning their freedom in the end, as they are being viewed as human beings. However, Hamlet's inhumane actions represent the very human ability to drown oneself in a fight and get obsessed with winning rather than the reward.
Overall, our adaptation of Hamlet highlights not only the highs of social justice, but the lows of the human race. Oppression in our version of Hamlet reflects the power struggle through the kingdom in the original Hamlet. The plot stays the same while some new elements are added to truly highlight the late 1950s and 1960s. Thanks for watching!